welcome to my podcast, Love and Courageous. I'm the host, Demetris, and on today's episode, I'll be getting into property taxes. Property taxes that has been increasing and is leading to people losing their homes. First, I want to get into what are property taxes. So, property tax is imposed on the value of real estate, such as land and buildings, and sometimes even personal property. They are primarily a local tax, which rate sets by cities, counties, and special districts, such as school districts or fire departments. Property taxes is the main revenue source for many local governments, supporting a variety of essential public service, such as public schools. Emergency services, such as police and fire departments, rely on property taxes for personnel, equipment, and operations, and infrastructure, road construction, maintenance, and other public projects, such as library and transportation facilities. Property taxes are calculated by property assessment, so your local tax assessor determines the value of your property for tax purposes. Also, tax rate. The local government set a tax rate which is applied to your property assessed value. But one thing people don't know about property tax is why it was created in the first place. Property tax is rooted in racism. Property tax actually function as a regressive tax, meaning they take a higher income percentage from households with low incomes than from those with high incomes. Property tax is linked with systematic racism in the U.S. housing system, resulting in homeowners of melanin, mainly black people, paying disproportionately a high property tax relative to the market value of their homes. It all started after the Emancipation era. So after the Civil War, formerly enslaved black people recognized land ownership as a path to economic freedom. However, as they began to acquire land, local tax assessors systematically overvalued their properties for tax purposes while undervaluing the land of wealthy white landowners. During the Jim Crow period, discriminatory property assessments continued to be a tool of white supremacist governance. Assessors routinely impose higher tax burdens on black landowners than on white landowners, often denying black communities the public services those taxes were supposed to fund. Also, during the Jim Crow era, white officials would force delinquency and tax sales on black landowners. White officials deliberately manipulated tax laws to force black property owners into delinquency. They would neglect to mail tax bills or record payments and then quietly sell the properties at tax sales without the black owner's knowledge or proper notice. Due to these practices, black landowners have lost millions of acres of land, much of it through tax repossession and predatory tax buying schemes. Also, redlining. The legacy of redlining, denied financial services and investment in minority communities had contributed to lower property values and decreased tax revenues in those areas. Also, flawed assessment systems, current property assessment methods can be based on outdated data and techniques, leading to inaccuracies that disadvantage minority homeowners. Also, when it comes to appeals, research indicates that homeowners of melanin are less likely to appeal their property assessments, and when they do, they are less likely to win their appeals or receive smaller reductions compared to white owners. There are some more things that white people have done in the past to make sure that black people do not keep their homes. During the 1890s, Mississippi Constitutional Convention, in response to changes during Reconstruction, delegates adopted a constitutional requirement for a 3/5 vote in both houses of the legislature for all state tax increases, as opposed to a simple majority vote typical of most other legislation, the oldest such requirement still on the books in any state. The delegate who introduced the supermajority requirement stated, I quote, all understood and desired that some scheme would be evolved which would effectually remove from the sphere of politics in the state the ignorant and unpatriotic Negro. Supermajority requirements are a handful to states as they make it difficult for lawmakers to raise needed revenue and give a small handful of lawmakers and special interests outsized power. In Alabama, during state constitutional conventions in 1875 and 1901, Alabama delegates put in place highly restrictive property tax limits to protect white property owners in the state from the possibility that black people and their allies could return to power and substantially increase property tax rates to fund education and other such measures. These limits have been in place for over 140 years, producing a harmful cumulative effect. Today, Alabama's property tax revenue as a share of its economy is the lowest of any state in America, seriously hampering the ability of local governments to provide adequate schools and other public services. During this period, Arkansas, Missouri, and Texas also adopted constitutional property tax limits that remain in force still today. When it comes to education funding in Kentucky, during the 20th century, Kentucky allocated property taxes to its racially segregated schools based on taxpayers' race. Schools attended by white children received all of the property taxes paid by white residents, while schools attended by black children received only the taxes paid by black families. Since black families in Kentucky have far less property wealth than white families, at that time, a lot of black people were only a generation or so removed from slavery. This ensured that black children would attend separate and very unequally funded schools. Other southern states produced a similar result by distributing funds to districts, regardless of race, but allowing local officials to direct most of the funding to segregated schools for white children. Now, taxes did not only hurt black people, but also hurted Latinos, Asians, and other people that are non-white. During the gold rush years of the 1850s, California imposed a special tax on immigrant minors. U.S.-born whites were not subject to the tax. The tax fell on immigrant minors of European descent as well as those from China and Latin America. But for a period in 1855 and 1856, the state imposed an additional tax solely on immigrant minors ineligible for citizenship, mainly Chinese and Latin minors who were legally barred from becoming U.S. citizens because they were not free white persons. The tax was a major revenue source for California at the time. It raised over a quarter of the state's revenue in 1856. Also, when it comes to sales taxes is also rooted in racism. In 1932, Mississippi adopted the nation's first modern retail sales tax, a tax that generally falls hardest on those with the least income because sales taxes consume a larger share of their income. The state's governor at the time, Mike Connor, urged adopting the new tax in part by emphasizing that the revenue would be used to reduce property taxes, and that as a result it would shift the state tax base away from property owners and more heavily onto consumers. What that meant in practice was a reduction in taxes owned by mostly white property owners and an increase in those owned by black households that owned little or no property and had little else to tax. Other states in America adopted sales taxes not long after Mississippi demonstrated the tax ability and its significant revenue raising power. When it comes to racial discrimination and local and state tax policies, historically has occurred not only through the policies, but through how tax authorities administer those policies. State and local governments could also use tax assessments as a political tool to sustain the status quo by punishing Black people who protested Jim Crow laws or other discriminatory systems. For a prime example, back in 1966, the white-dominated government of a Mississippi town selectively raised the property assessments of Black people participating in a boycott of white-owned businesses, which was prompted by the town's refusal to integrate a local swimming pool. In 1 year, Black property owners in the town saw their assessments increase by more than 50%. Also, when it comes to property taxes and segregation, in Chicago during the 1970s, the county tax assessor's office tended to overassess properties owned by Black people. One reason was when neighborhoods transitioned from white to Black, property values declined because white people, a large share of the housing market, no longer wanted the homes. Yet, tax assessments did not account for this decline in value. A number of Black homeowners could not pay their taxes and lost these homes to predatory lien buyers who took advantage of laws making it relatively easy for them to seize people's homes when a property tax bill was overdue. Similar issues arose in other northern cities such as Philadelphia and Baltimore. One thing about the tax system is that it has made inequality worse. In 45 of 50 states, state and local tax systems require lower income households to pay a larger share of their income in taxes than high income households. And since households of melanin are more likely to have low incomes, they tend to pay larger shares of their incomes in state and local taxes than white households do. Nationally, the poorest fifth of households pay a much larger share of their income in state and local taxes than the top 1% on average. Also, undocumented immigrants contribute a big portion to state and local taxes. The Trump administration immigration policies have broken apart families and removed established members of communities. Many of those young immigrants qualified for deferred deportation action and legal work authorization under Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, also known as DACA, a 2012 executive order. Like all other state residents, DACA participants pay state and local sales taxes on their purchases and property taxes on their homes they own or as part of the rent they pay. With the temporary legal status they receive through DACA, they also are eligible for work permits and pay $2 billion a year in state and local taxes that support schools, healthcare, and other essential services. Also, undocumented immigrants pay a larger share of their incomes in state and local taxes than the top 1% of taxpayers do. Nationally, undocumented immigrants pay 8.9% of state and local tax rates, versus the top 1% only pays 5.4% of state and local tax rates. And last but not least, when it comes to the 2013 tax cuts, for a prime example in North Carolina, it only reduced the taxes of the highest income state residents by 1.5% of their income on average, but only 0.1% of income for the lowest income North Carolinians, according to the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy. White North Carolinians comprise 2/3 of state taxpayers, but receive 81% of the tax cuts. Now, Black North Carolinians comprise 22% of state taxpayers, but receive 10% of the tax cuts. Black residents now pay a larger share of state taxes than before, while white residents pay a smaller share. People of Hispanic or Latinx heritage also pay a larger share than before. The tax system that white people have created is still hurting black homeowners still today in America. Bonita Anderson is one black homeowner who purchased her home back in 2009 but lost it in 2022 due to not paying her property taxes. After more than a decade of making payments towards her $100,000 mortgage, Bonita Anderson was diagnosed with cancer in 2020. Amid mounting medical bills and property taxes, she said she had to choose between fighting for her life and fighting for her home. While undergoing treatment, Bonita Anderson fell behind on her property taxes by almost $5,000. In 2022, she lost her house at a Baltimore City tax sale. She made a statement and told ABC News senior political correspondent Rachel Scott, I quote, "I sat down and thought, oh my God, I'm 70 years old and I'm homeless." The city of Baltimore had put a lien on Bonita Anderson tax debt and auctioned it off to the highest bidder, a purchase that specialized in tax lien purchases for just $69,500. If you can't afford to pay your property taxes and you keep missing your payments, government is going to auction your property off by back taxes. Now, court records showed that Anderson tried to make good and redeem her home, paying the city $18,900 by the end of 2022, more than triple her outstanding taxes. But instead of putting these payments towards her back taxes, the city applied the money to taxes that had accrued under the new owner. Anderson was unknowingly paying the investors' tax bills instead of her own, allowing the company to foreclose her home in 2023. Anderson said, I quote, "I was baffled. I don't know what's worse, losing the house or being diagnosed with cancer. It hurts still." Bonita Anderson house was listed for sale at nearly $540,000, more than 5 times what she paid for it, but she will not see any of the proceeds. Another black homeowner who lost her home was 91-year-old Gloria Gaynor, who lived in suburban Delaware County of Pennsylvania. Gloria Gaynor, who suffered from dementia, lost her home of 25 years due to owing $3,500 in taxes that she did not pay during the COVID-19 pandemic. Gloria Gaynor's daughter, Jackie Davis, told ABC station that her mother stayed home during the pandemic. She skipped her annual trip to the tax office after hearing that tax collectors had paused enforcement as COVID-19 spread through the Philadelphia suburbs. When the government restarted collection efforts and the county tax office reopened, Gloria Gaynor went in and made a payment, intending to cover her previous year's taxes. Instead, the money was applied to her 2021 and 2022 taxes and not her outstanding balance from 2020, leaving what is essentially a donut in her tax payment history. A real estate investor bought Gloria Gaynor's home from Delaware County for $14,000, the cost of her overdue taxes, plus interest and fees. Gloria Gaynor had paid off most of her mortgage on the house, which is now worth an estimated $247,000, but she did not make any money from the sale. Her lawyer, whose name is Alexander Bart, made a comment and said, I quote, "This is stripping generational wealth from the have-nots and allowing the haves to have it." Gloria Gaynor family went to court in an attempt to get back her home, but 2 courts upheld the sale. If Gloria Gaynor had lived just a few miles away inside Philadelphia's city limits, officials there would have taken extra steps to try to keep her in her home. Since property taxes have handled differently in different communities, and some municipalities like Philadelphia have layers of protection for vulnerable homeowners, such as requiring in-person notifications before a tax sale or offering payment plans to redeem a home afterward. Although local governments should do everything they can to keep people in their homes, whether it's an owner or a renter, at some point they have an obligation to all the other taxpayers, businesses, and families that are paying their fair share to make sure that these taxes are collected. Now, Gloria Gaynor is living with her daughter in Baltimore suburb. Also, the woman that I mentioned earlier, Bonita Anderson, had taken her case to court, joining a lawsuit claiming that the city of Baltimore broke federal law by selling her former home to a private company for pennies on the dollar. The city of Baltimore, which did not respond to ABC News' request for comment, has defended its actions in court, saying it notified Anderson as required and did not profit from the sale. In 2023, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that local governments could not profit from tax sales, finding that homeowners have a constitutional right to any payments beyond the taxes and penalties they owe. Over the last 2 years, many states across the country have changed their laws in the light of the court's decision. But some experts say the federal government also has a role to play. The federal answer to lower local property taxes is more funding for local services. They need more help from Congress and the White House. Now, the Trump administration has slashed the federal budget. And due to this, local governments will have to make up the difference to provide the same services. And according to experts, municipalities will likely rely more on property taxes, which could lead to more situations like Gloria Gaynor and Bonita Anderson, where Black homeowners are more likely to pay more than their fair share. There are property taxes relief programs out there, and I'm going to go over a few. So one is homestead exemptions. These programs reduce the taxable value of your primary residence, either by a fixed dollar amount or a percentage of the home's value. Eligibility often depends on age. Many states offer exemptions for senior citizens, disability, veteran status. Disabled veterans and surviving spouses often receive exemptions. Income level. Some exemptions target low-income homeowners and residency. The property must typically be your primary residence to qualify. Circuit Breaker is another program. These programs provide a property tax credit to homeowners and sometimes renters if their property tax bill exceeds a certain percentage of their income. The credit amount may vary based on income level. Property tax abatements is another program. Temporarily reduce or eliminate property taxes, often offered by local governments to encourage economic development or revitalization in specific areas. They can be granted for new construction, energy efficient improvements, or to attract businesses and jobs. Tax credits for homeowners. In addition to homestead exemptions, some states offer tax credits for specific homeowner actions, such as making energy efficient home improvements or purchasing a first home. For example, the federal government offers non-refundable tax credits for homeowners who make energy-efficient upgrades, covering up to 30% of the cost of improvements, with an annual limit of $1,200. Now, if you want to find out any more about property tax relief programs, make sure you visit your city, county, or state tax department website. You can contact your local tax assessor's office or utilize online resources. Also, keep in mind, especially for people that are non-white, eligibility requirements vary significantly by location. Be wary of services that require payment to file for tax relief. And some programs require annual applications or have income limits that need to be met each year to maintain eligibility. That is all for today, and I'm going to get into the Black History. The Black History fact will be about Philip B. Downing, the black man that invented the mailbox. Born in Providence, Rhode Island on March the 22nd of 1857, Philip Bell Downing came from a prominent background. His father, George T. Downing, was a well-known abolitionist and business owner, while his mother, Serena L. Degrassi had family roots in New York City, New York dating back to the mid-1600s. Philip Downing's grandfather, Thomas Downing, had been born to emancipated parents in Virginia. He also had success in business, establishing Downing's Oyster House in the financial district of Manhattan in 1825. It quickly became one of the city's best-known dining and catering establishments. In addition, Thomas Downing played an important role in founding the United Anti-Slavery Society of the City of New York in the mid-1830s. Philip Downing is one of 6 kids, spent his childhood in Providence and Newport, Rhode Island, as well in Washington, D.C., where his father was manager of the U.S. House of Representatives dining room. Census records indicate that Philip Bell Downing moved to Boston around 1880. Shortly thereafter, he married Evangeline Howard and had 2 kids, Antonia Downing and Philip Downing Jr. On June the 17th of 1890, the U.S. Patent Office approved Philip Bell Downing application for new and useful improvements in street railway switches. His invention allowed these switches to be opened or closed by using a brass arm located next to the brake handle on the platform of the car. It also allowed the switches to be changed automatically in some cases. A little over a year later, on October the 27th, 1891, his 2 patents for a street letterbox also gained approval. Philip Bell Downing's design resembled the mailboxes that are now a tall metal box with a secure hinge door to drop letters. Until this point, those wishing to send mail usually had to travel to the post office. Philip Bell Downing's invention would instead allow for a drop-off near one's home and easy pickup by letter carrier. His idea for the hinge opening prevented rain or snow from entering the box and damaging the mail. More than 25 years later, on January 26 of 1917, Philip Bell Downing would receive another patent for an envelope moistener, which utilized a roller and a small attached water tank to quickly moisten envelopes. The following year saw another successful application for an easily accessible desktop notepad. Philip Bell Downing passed away in Boston on June the 8th of 1934. He was 77 years old. So that's all for my episode. Thank you everyone for listening to my podcast, and I hope everybody have a lovely day.